Hi everyone, it's Vicky here and welcome back to another Mixed Media Tuesday. And today I'm going to create a mixed media canvas. I decided to play on a canvas today so that I can add lots of dimension, since I usually go flat while playing inside my art journal, but once in a while it is always fun to do that. So this is a little canvas, it has a lovely texture and I get them from Arteza. Now the size is 8 by 8, which means that any 8 by 8 paper pad would be perfect to cover up your background. This will provide a great way to start. You don't have to fight with a blank area and you can definitely go ahead and build up many layers on top of the paper. So I'm going to pick one of those from my Welcome Home collection and I'm going with this lovely one that gives you a wood grain texture along with lots of typography at the background. And I find that this is very neutral, so you can use it for pretty much any style that you are going for, since you can add color and make it your own. So this will be my starting point. I'm going to bring in my mixed media glue and I will stick it on top of my canvas. This is going to completely cover it up. Now, one little tip that I can give you: when you try to stick a paper on top of something, a good idea is to wet the paper first. So here I'm just using water and I'm wetting my paper. This is going to help when I stick it down to eliminate any bubbles. Trust me, it does work. So anyway, I'm going to apply a good amount of mixed media glue on my canvas. Make sure that this is everywhere, and I like for these applications to use a wide brush. It makes my job easy and fast. And then I'm going to apply on top my wet paper. My mixed media glue doesn't dry very fast, so I have enough time to stick those pieces together. And then with my bone folder, I'm making sure that I don't end up with any air bubbles. Now the truth is that if you do end up with air bubbles, just brace them. I'm sure they are not going to hurt anyone. And at the end of the day, you can say that it was intentional since it adds some texture. Now I'm also going to cover up completely the top. This way I am sealing it down and I will be able to do lots of techniques on top of it without inks or sprays soaking into the paper. Now I have a sanding block and I'm going to rough up the edges. This is going to make sure that they blend nicely together with the edges of the paper, with the edges of the canvas. And if there are any areas that stick a little bit outside, it's going to cut them off. And now I'm going to bring in my primer and I will go with a brush at the back and add some brush strokes. You can do that with gesso, definitely, it does the same job. By doing that, you add different textures on your background, and when you go ahead and add any medium, sprays, inks, whatever, it's going to give a different look. So it is always nice to add layers like that. I'm making sure that this layer is completely dry, and if you noticed, I didn't add it all over the place, just concentrated in one area of my canvas where I am planning to stick my composition later on. Then for the next layer, I'm going to bring in one of my stencils. This is a brick and wall stencil from my latest collection. And I'm going to use the brick at the bottom with my spatula and volume paste. Very randomly, I'm going to apply this design on some areas of my canvas, and of course I'm not going to completely cover it up, as well as try to avoid any rectangular shapes. I like this to look organic and random. Now of course this texture at the moment is white on white and it is really hard to tell where it is. However, we are going to bring in all the texture into life later on. So I have here a couple of sprays. These are the Aquacolor sprays by Stamperia, and the fun part about them is that they dry permanent, which is a good thing depending on the techniques that you are going for. So instead of spraying directly, I'm going to do a more controlled application of color. So you see I have a brush which I dip inside the spray bottle and then apply the color in different areas. Remember that my background is sealed, so the color isn't soaked inside the paper and I can easily move it around by spraying some water on top. I'm going for a watercolor look and feel, that's why I spray a lot of water on top of it for a more diluted version of the same color. So again, I'm going to apply some water. This is going to help it move around, and you can go ahead and do that again and again until you are happy with what you see here. At the same time, notice that the color goes all around that texture that we added previously with the stencils, so it does bring that design into life at the same time. It is a really fun technique and it's not as random as it looks. You do have control, since instead of spraying directly with the color, you go with a brush. So you can kind of manipulate exactly where you are applying the color. Also, I like to add lighter layers of color, and then I can dry it if I want to and build up a second layer on top if I want to oversaturate the color in some areas. Remember, these are going to dry permanent, so once I dry this first layer, I can go ahead and play with water on top of it without moving it around. So here's exactly what I did. I dried the first layer and now I'm going over it again with the same colors and oversaturate some areas. Again, I'm not going to leave it as blue as it looks at the moment. I will apply some water and dilute it a little bit more. And of course, at this stage, you can go ahead and do layers over layers until you're happy. You can mix and match many different colors. I'm going to stop here. So again, I'm grabbing my heat gun to make sure that this layer is completely dry and permanent, and then let's move on to the next step, which is of course to add some splatters to control them and make sure that they are fine splatters. I'm using a very thin brush and I'm going to dip my brush in both of those colors and add some splatters here and there. Again, remember, those splatters are going to stay on top of the paper because it is sealed, and at the same time they are going to dry permanent. Now, to add some contrast on this background, I'm going to add some black splatters, again using Aquacolor, and they are going to dry permanent as well. Not too much, but some here and there. I'm going to do some stamping, which is going to blend nicely with those black dots that I have already on my background. So here I'm bringing my stamps. These are all from my collections and I absolutely love the designs. They are always perfect and designed for backgrounds. So for this one I'm going with script stamp, and I'm going to do the stamping by using Archival Ink. I'm using Archival Ink because I'm planning to do different techniques that I don't want the stamping to move if I add any wet medium on top. Now at this stage, I know that this is where about I'm going to put together my composition, and that's why I'm stamping there to create kind of a cluster. However, I don't know exactly where everything is going to fall, so some of that stamping may be covered up later on, but it is a fun layer to do, and you will see that that black stamping is going to pick underneath some elements that I'm going to stick later on. Now I'm bringing in one of the circle stamps that I absolutely love to combine and to create stamped clusters with it. Again, stamping in all those cluster areas. And I'm happy with how that looks. I'm going to stop here and let's move on to the next step of my composition, where it is to create the focal points. Now for that I'm going to bring in a very old mold from Stamperia, and I'm going for that frame. I am going to pour in some resin to create my frame, and I need to make sure that this is nicely leveled. And for leveling up my Stamperia molds, I usually go with my ink pads. You can double them up and make sure that everything is nicely leveled. And then I'm going to mix my 2-part resin. I need to add equal parts from each bottle and then mix them nicely. My little silicone cup does have some lines on the outside, which makes it really easy for me to pour up to certain lines instead of using a scale and measure. Now, I do have a silicone cup as well as a silicone little stick to mix up the resin, which is great because I can reuse them again and again. I don't throw them away. You know that you mix them nicely because you will feel some heat as you hold the cup. And then I can pour in the frame. Now you can be very careful and pour only the outside. I didn't care really because I don't care about the inside. I'm not going to have anything sticking on the inside of the frame, but you can definitely do that if you like. Now I'm going to wait for it to cure, and it does cure in less than 10 minutes, this specific resin that I'm using. And you will see the magic happening in front of your eyes. From liquid and transparent, it's going to start becoming white and solid. Even when it turns white all the way, I'm going to leave it for a couple more minutes just to make sure that it is going to be super easy to unmold. And of course there are other ways to use the molds instead of resin. You can definitely use clay or even a ceramic powder. But I always go with resin because I find that I always get the perfect results. Now look how gorgeous it is, but at the same time it is very shiny, it is plastic, and any color is not going to grab on top of it. That's why you need to prime it. And again, you can do that with gesso if you have thick gesso, or you can do it with a primer. I do have my primer on my desk, that's why I go with it lately. I'm going to cover it up completely and dry it out. And here is what you have. This is now primed and perfect for getting any type of color on top of it. And you see I go over it with my blending brush and my dye ink pad, and this is the color cream. It is perfect to remove that bright white of the frame. And I rub the brush, making sure that it goes on all the nooks and crannies, and then with a baby wipe I'm going to wipe off only the mountains. This is going to give a shabby chic look and feel on the frame, really quick and simple, and you get the result in no time at all. Later on, as I work on the project, you will see that I will change my mind on the color of this frame. But as I always say, you need to feel free to change your mind as you are working on a project, depending on where that project takes you. So here I'm going to make sure that this is dry. And here I grabbed the Aquacolor that I used on the background and just added a few dots of color on the frame just to help it blend with the rest of the project. A touch of it here and there is going to do the trick. At this stage I'm happy with how the frame looks, so I'm just going to stick it down. And for that I'm going to use the easy way. I just grabbed my hot glue gun. And as I always do with my glue, I don't go all the way to the edges of my element, so later on as I put together my composition, if I decide to tack something underneath this element, I will be able to do so. Now let's put together another element, and for this project I had the idea to use this burlap, and this is just a piece from a bigger roll that I cut out in a triangular shape, and I'm just going to roll it together. I will use a dot of my hot glue gun at the back to keep it in place, and the idea is to create the wrapping of a flower bouquet. Then I'm going to use a piece of white string, and I'm just going to use my scissors and go all along this string just to rough it up a little bit, and I don't like that folded edges that it has, some corners and stuff, so I'm going to wrap it around my flower wrap, hold it tight with a knot, and you can add a dot of your hot glue gun here if you want to make sure that it's going to stay put, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. So I am creating my own three-dimensional element to put on top of my canvas, and of course you can imagine what goes next. I'm going to stick this on top of the frame, And then inside I will create a flower composition. But for now let's work a little bit on the frame again, because I don't like how empty it is at the moment. So I grabbed a scrap piece of pattern paper and I'm going to stick it there. You see it isn't perfect. I'm also going to round the corners so it fits a little bit better. But again, I'm not going for the perfect insert here. I just want to make sure that it fits good enough. Now let's turn it into looking a little bit more interesting. I am going to bring in my cream blending brush and I'm just making sure that it's not bright white, and then I'm going to grab my coffee dye ink and I will go all around the edges. It doesn't look much, but you will see that now I'm going to bring in my water spray and I'm going to spray on top of it, which is going to blend a little bit better, and it's going to create a lovely border around this piece. Now I'm going to stick it down. You can use glue, you can use your hot glue gun. I'm going with my mixed media glue here. And the moment I placed that piece inside the frame, I just loved that brown border that it had. I felt like it really brought it to life. So this is where I'm having second thoughts. I'm thinking, oh, I don't like the frame, it is too bright white. I need to do something, so I'm going to be brave and I will work on top of it and change it completely. So I'm going to bring in my coffee dye ink pad and my blending brush, and you will see the transformation of what we have here into what I decided to turn it into. And you can be the judge of it if you like it or not. It really depends on what you are thinking at the moment. Again, remember, I don't have a plan from the beginning, and that's why I didn't edit this part out, so that you can see my thought process and how I kind of follow the project rather than the project following what I have in my mind. So here you see I'm covering up completely the whole frame. I'm not being very careful. You see I go outside, that doesn't matter. This is sealed underneath and everything is permanent, so I can easily wipe off any excess with a baby wipe, and you see it's not an issue at all. So I'm going to make sure that this is completely covered up. And then I'm going to bring in my baby wipe and wipe off only the mountains. So now it is better. I like how the contrast is more into your face, and I think it matches more the project that I'm going for. But it really depends on the look that you're going for. For a more shabby chic look, you can stay with the previous style of the frame. Of course, now I have too much brown on my focal point and I need to add a little bit brown on the background too, to bring everything together. But I don't want to turn it into a complete vintage looking project. That's why I add only a little bit here and there. So now let's create the composition on top of the frame. I am going to stick down my burlap wrap. And again, I did use my hot glue gun for that. And now I'm going to bring in a package of paper flowers. Now these are by Stamperia. I have no idea if they are still available. If they are, you will find them linked in the list of the supplies that I always post below the video. But I'm sure you are able to locate the paper flowers or even make your own. So the idea is to create a flower composition inside that wrap so that it looks like a flower bouquet. I'm going to put on some music and you can see how I put that together, and you will notice that I even inked up the centers of those paper flowers by using my yellow ink. So in the beginning I was thinking to stop here with the flowers, but you know, flowers are never enough and I wanted to add something extra on the canvas. That's why I'm going to create another little cluster on the right corner, bottom corner of my frame. Again, by using flowers from the same set of paper flowers and the same leaves. Now I'm going to bring in my Rub-ons, and these are the black border Rub-ons from my first ever release with Stamperia. You can use your scissors and cut out the parts that you want to use, and instead of using them as borders around my frame, I'm going to use them to add some extra interest on some of the areas around my cluster. And you will see I will combine more than one of those designs. Of course, you can definitely grab your black marker and do some doodling if you wish so. I just find these very handy. Now the next step is to do some dry brushing over all the elements. Again, a little detail that is going to bring the whole composition together. I'm using a brush that I haven't dipped in water at all. I'm just using my primer here. You can definitely use gesso or white paint. Just make sure that you don't transfer any water and just go lightly and brush some white color over all of the elements. And of course I have to add some white splatters. You can do the white splatters again with the same paint that you used for the previous step if you dilute it with water. But if you happen to have a bottle of white calligraphy ink, it is really handy. All you do is just dip a thin brush inside and just add the splatters. And then to complete my composition, you always know that I like to add a word or a quote. For this project I'm going with the word grateful, and this is a pack of Chipboard sayings, perfect for projects like this one and for our journaling. And these are self-adhesive, however I'm going to make sure that it's going to stay put by using my hot glue gun. I did ink up the edges just a tiny bit with my blending brush there. Again, that was coffee dye ink to match the same look and feel as the rest of the project, and I'm going to stick it down. So this is the mixed media canvas for today. It's going straight up on the wall of my craft room along with the rest of my projects, and I'm absolutely happy with the finished result. If you did enjoy the video and had fun, don't forget to like as well as leave me a comment. It really makes a difference. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you all next time.